I have this very shawl. I debated about wearing it, and I thought, no, there's one here already. So.
She also has this jacket too.
I do. I do. Yeah, you know, things are just very beautiful. Let's see, I wanted to also talk about some of the things Chad was talking about. I forget I know. I was going to talk about the small businesses, the factories. I remember going to one of the weaving factories outside of Tokyo, and there were 6 old looms, old mechanical looms. So they could run on their own after someone set them up. But there were 2 very elderly, there was a couple, 2 very elderly people who would watch those looms. They would go and make sure that no threads broke. If a thread broke, they would stop it, repair the thread, and then start them going again. So there was that mark of the hand, which was so important to NUNO cloth. Also in the embroidery business, and I went to one, and I guess there is one, and saw these designs that the design would be developed by Reiko, and then these machines would magically do this embroidery, which I thought was absolutely beautiful. And I'm not an embroiderer myself, so it was kind of magic to me. I'm going to go start back at the beginning again too. When Junichi and I left NUNO for other creative projects, Reiko just went right ahead with the business, and she was the best choice of anybody to manage that business because she had the vision. She knew how to design things. She was interested in designing things that were outside of the box. Stuff that she would use materials that were not used anywhere else, and produce them for interiors and clothing and installations. So her work is in the permanent collection of museums, at the Victoria and Albert Museum, at Museum of Modern Art, and other museums around the world. But she also does exhibits in lots of different places, lots of museums, lots of galleries, and this also all around the world. And she's I think that her exhibitions have really bumped up the level of exhibition work, because she's interested in how can I display this in a way that's unique and that really is an advantage to the materials that are being used. So, for example, she uses NUNO material to make koi no bori, which is, these are carp, they're fish that are used to celebrate Children's Day in Japan. And she has used the fish in a few different galleries or museum spaces, and they just hang from the ceiling. And so there's these, you go in there and you feel like you are underwater. You're in these fish. And so she's very inventive in how she presents her material. Let's see, I'm going to mention a couple things. Okay, early on in NUNO, Reiko put together these books. There's 7 different books, and we've got a bunch of them sitting around here that you can look at. And okay, this one is called Fua Fua. And Japanese use onomatopoeia as part, I mean, it's common. And this is a double onomatopoeia, Fua Fua. An onomatopoeia kind of can either sound like or reflect the object that it is describing. So a lot of times, and I think if this is true with the NUNO books, it sort of serves as an adjective. And so Fua Fua means fluffy. And so this whole book is full of the textiles that they were producing at that time that were fluffy. And so I'm just trying to see if there was a fluffy one here. Not sure. Anyway, so then there's also Boro Boro, which is, Boro Boro means, I know what it means. It means kind of messy. And she has the definitions in each of these books in the front. Rugged, tattered, I should put my glasses on, worn out, in rags, in tatters, in shreds, in ribbons. So that gives you a sense of Boro Boro. And I saw, we had one here earlier, and I think somebody bought the white one with, yeah. And it was, but it shows just different pieces of the textile sticking out, and that being part of the concept of the cloth. And one of the things that it reminds one of is like riches to rags and back to riches. So that's Boro Boro. And there's another one that, this is the one I wanted to talk about because it has to do with the origami. And it's called Zoku Zoku. And it is, let's see, it says, okay. Thrilling, chilling, spine tingling, sends shivers down one's spine, emotive, moving, riveting, further, successive, consecutive. And that's the part that makes me think of the origami. And so that one, Zoku Zoku. And there are 4 more books sitting around here describing different aspects of cloth. So I was in Kiryu City, and Chad mentioned Kiryu City, which is north of Tokyo, I think.
North, yeah, a little northeast, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the place where they do so much experimentation up there, as well as production. And so the first time they made one of these scarves, I was there. I can't believe how fortunate I was. And so the staff person that Chad referred to had come up to Kiryu City with Reiko and me, and she had a piece of like brown craft paper, and she had folded it into an origami shape and put the polyester inside the paper, and then they sent it through a heat setting machine, and the thermoplastic characteristics of the polyester, the heat, and the plastic being its ability to be shaped by it. It came out, and then the second thing that happened, they take the polyester out of the paper, and you've got this polyester. They took paper that was impregnated with color, and they, for example, there's one over there, the red and green one.
Or this one's a red base with navy blue,
Okay,
navy blue paper transfer dye.
so, yeah, I have a red and green one like this.
That one is sold, sorry. But I think there's another one.
No touch.
So the red would be a paper laying down, and then the folded up form would lay on top of the red paper, and then in this case, a blue paper would be put on top. So it's a sandwich. It's like a little origami sandwich. And that goes through the heat press. And that transfers the color onto the cloth. So you come out with a cloth that has two colors, one on each side. And yes, I have a red and green one. I mean, it was just, this was an eye-opener for me. And I started using a heat press in my own work. Let's see. What else was I gonna talk about? Yeah, that's, oh yeah, there's one other big hanging, and it's in the other window there. You see it from the outside, and it's a beautiful red piece. And it is, yeah,
Somebody took the red one.
yes, it's like this, and it's round. It has all round imagery in the piece, but it's just beautiful. You look at it and you go, wow, how could they do that? Well, they did that with the water-soluble backing. So once that got embroidered in the shape that they wanted it to be, then they washed it out, and now it's like this, only different. But it's the thing is that there are so many different types of textiles that they have inspired other designers to do. Other designers in other countries are doing some of the same things. But really, Reiko was the one who set up all of this. She designed this. Now, she worked with Junichi Arai for a long time, and she learned a lot from him. She also learned from Issey Miyake, and she always gives them credit, when that's the case. Just like in her books, the big book that's here, that's for sale here. This big book kind of incorporates almost everything that's in the little books and more. And it, in that too, she credits people for what they did, her staff, and it's she's a generous designer and person. Let's see if there's anything else I was going to say about her. Oh, well, she was in Eugene
1995.
1995, and it was her first international show. And she says that all the time. She goes, it was here. This was my first international show. This is what started it. And she, yeah, here's the brochure from that show, and it's sitting over here, so please take a look at it if you'd like. So Cynthia Bogle was an art history professor at the time, and I was an MFA student in fibers. And Cynthia saw an installation that I did of my work and asked me if I would like to work with her on Reiko's show. And of course I said, yeah, I would. And so I did, and we put together this brochure and the show, and it was for me, it was really a life-changing experience because, yeah, we did this. We put these samples in the
I
brochure.
remember students were cutting the fabric, put them together.
Oh, yeah. So that we could get them in the brochures, because we tried to, we wanted to be a little different. And so these brochures, they weren't inexpensive to make, but they're memorable for everybody who's had one. Anyway, after that, I was able to get a Japan Foundation individual artist grant. And I went, and Reiko was one of the people who wrote a recommendation for me. So I got that grant. I was in Japan for 4 months, and Reiko, as I say, very generous woman, she let me use the facilities at NUNO. I had a little computer, a chair, and when I traveled around the country, she sent her staff with me most of the time, because my Japanese was very limited, and there were a lot of things, I didn't know a lot of things, like how do you say weaving, weaving terminology in Japanese. All I know is warp and weft and weaving. And so that was very helpful and very generous of her to do that. So when I get a chance to see Reiko, I jump at it. And she may be coming here while the show's up, we don't know. And but periodically, the last time I saw her was in Canada, in Vancouver. Meiwa Handprints is a textile company up there, and Reiko has done some talks there. So, any questions? Yeah.
Will you tell us about your scarf?
Oh, this one is not in production now.
Animals.
Oh, and actually, I'm glad you asked me that, because I wanted to talk about something with this. This is double weave. And a lot of these are double weave. If you look at these, for example, my scarf, and I think these also, yeah. Which means that there are 2 layers of threads that are being woven in the warp. The warp is the set of threads that's under tension on the loom. So if you have 2, one is for the front and one is for the back. But when you weave, you can change their positions for a part of, for any kind of pattern you want to make. And when you do that, the color is reversed front to back. So this is double weave, black and white, and it's wool, and it's got an overspun wool in the weft, so it You can stretch it. And so that makes it pucker a little. And then where each little section has a join, where there's an animal and then it joins another part where there's another animal. And what you have there is a little fuzzy part. So that's this. Any other questions?
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
We talked about double weave.
Yeah.
Actually, what the woman had asked me about earlier, the shawl that has the pocket, like
Yes,
pockets,
yes, yeah.
is probably a multi-layer weave, and I don't understand multi-layer weave as well as I should,
Uh-huh.
and I can't explain it. Can you explain a multi-layer weave?
Yeah, let me look at this one. I remember when Reiko had some cloth that was, had feathers
Yeah,
inside
the
the
feather one,
pockets.
right? Feather flurries, yeah.
Yeah, so, you can have different layers.
Right.
The feathers were only 2
Well,
layers.
yeah,
But then
yes.
they were open.
They were open
So-
and you stopped the
the
loom,
feathers.
filled it, and then started the loom again, yeah.
Right, so it closed after you put the
We
feather in.
don't, we don't make that fabric anymore because it is a
Feathers?
sure way to break the loom. And they refuse to do
Oh,
it
really?
anymore.
Oh.
Stopping and starting every couple inches, yeah.
Oh, I see how this is. This is
You
going
see,
sideways.
that's like another layer, isn't it?
Let's see. Trying to look at this side.
The back doesn't have pockets.
Okay, but the back, the giveaway for 2 layers is, well, not always, but the color changes, front and back.
Okay.
And on this one, what I think it's a double weave, but it's
only partial.
not, it's open on one side. So it's not all the way, doesn't go all the way through.
All the way through.
So where it's open, there's a little, you can see through to the back and see the other color that's on the back side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah.
Hi. Thank you. Both of you talked a lot about the relationship between designers and traditional craftspeople. But at one point you talked a lot about the excitement of being present in experimentation, and experimentation with some techniques to me that sound very edgy in terms of engineering and
Yes.
contemporary. So I wonder, are there people who are trained, who sit alongside traditional craftspeople who are trained, like contemporary engineers, who sit along traditional craftspeople who work together and innovate together? And if that's so, how does that work?
I'm really glad you asked that question because I was just reading my, something I'd written about Reiko, and engineering is a word that I use. She does engineering, and I'm sure she refers to anybody with questions that she has about particular practices. But I was telling Esther earlier, Reiko's education is different. In her education in Japan as an art student, they include a lot of design in the curriculum. Much different than art school here. And so she got exposed to the area where they do automotive plating, like, plating of door handles. And from that comes HP's jacket. Yeah. And then she also did some work with food,
Oh.
people who did food stuff. And she's was able to develop corn, cloth from corn, and
Banana
banana. Yes.
stalk.
The
Yeah.
banana, this was her invention of getting the banana in solution and coating cotton cloth with it, which made it cooler to wear, more like linen. And in the very hot climates there, that was much more comfortable than wearing just cotton. So that came from her work in food stuff. So I'm glad you asked
Yeah,
that.
it's beautiful. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, that's great.
Chad, is there anything you would like to add?
No, well, yeah, basically what she's saying is that role of that an engineer would play, or to update the factories in certain techniques, is probably pretty much done by the NUNO designers and their curiosity. And Reiko particularly, yeah, is pretty quick to pick up things seemingly unrelated to textiles, that she's able to use that. Then a lot of the things too are traditional techniques that have been somehow twisted to do something new. For example, there isn't an example here, but we do woven paper.
Yes.
And to make obis, the traditional belts, obis have gold, platinum, silver threads woven into them. To protect the thread, they're wrapped in paper and woven. And Reiko saw that and she said, well, why do we need the metal? Why don't we just try weaving the paper? And that came out. So some of these new techniques have also come from really old technologies that have been twisted, basically.
Yes, and talking about paper, she does make garments that are silk warp and paper weft, and they are washable.
Well, Marilyn and Chad will be here, so if you
Yes.
have more questions, please come up and ask them. I just want to add that was 1997 when Marilyn
Yes.
had the grant from the Japan Foundation and has we made this wonderful friendship with Reiko, so it's to have her insight. So the history of Reiko's development is wonderful. And more recently, Marilyn wrote a review of Reiko's new book, NUNO. So the article is here. If you like the link, we'll be happy to send it to you. And so do take a look of this wonderful.
You can write your name on the back of it if you want a copy. Oh, not on the back, on the front.
On the front, yeah. Well, it's probably better we just have another piece of paper here. Well, maybe we'll just send out to everybody. So they can read it. Thank you. And